Welcome back, everybody, to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with Jamie Uyeyama. We've had a couple weeks off, little rest and relaxation, and now we're getting ready for the college football season as Notre Dame gets prepared to play some football here. So very, very excited. Next week, the Yama's going to be heading to South Bend. I'll be there the following week, and we're ready for fall camp. Cannot wait. And so this week we're going to talk some offense. Next week we're going to talk some defense and get ready for the season. So hope you enjoy that. Before we get going, wanted to mention it's a great time to sign up for Irish Sports Daily. You can go to the front page, click on the premium section, and sign up for a premium subscription. Obviously, there's a lot going on with Notre Dame football and fall camp heading up. So if you want to know all the latest about what's going on and practice and all that kind of stuff, great time to sign up. Also wanted to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing. ESQ has been making the best handmade custom suits, sport coats, tuxedos, and shirts for the last decade. It has been featured on GQ, ESPN, USA Today, and you've seen them dressing your favorite players and coaches. ESQ only gets the best fabric from Italy and England's top mills. With over 40,000 fabrics to choose from, you're guaranteed to look your best. Go visit esqclothing.com and book your appointment. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Also wanted to mention, if you're listening on the podcast, you can check us out on YouTube. You can search for Irish Sports Daily, and once you find our channel there, make sure you subscribe to it. Like the videos, it helps us, and it also helps you, let you know when new content is out there and available for you. So please do that. Also wanted to mention, if you want to be a sponsor of Irish Sports Daily Power Hour or even on Irish Sports Daily alone, go ahead and email me at mikefrank18@gmail.com, mikefrank18@gmail.com, and I'll be glad to talk to you about it. It's pretty cheap, not a big financial investment, and you'll get your product out there to thousands and thousands of people. So Yama, fall camp is always so interesting because there's each year it changes. There's a lot of different things that are out there and topics that you want to discuss and that type of thing. But Notre Dame's going into this with Mike Denbrock being the second year as the offensive coordinator. We've seen in the past when Notre Dame has changed defensive coordinators, sometimes the first year is good, but it's not as great as the second year. Do you think that's what we're going to see with this offense this year, and the fact that now most of these players have a year under the system? They know what's expected. They know the playbook. They know the routes. They know everything that they're supposed to be doing. Do you think we'll see a big uptick in production with the offense this year?
Yeah, I do. I think that a big part of it is that it's going to be year two under Denbrock, like you said. I think that that's been his history, is that the offenses have been better, have taken like pretty big, like exponential leaps actually, in those second seasons, as everyone has gotten kind of used to everything and everything's become a little bit second nature. And I know, like, even if you think about just small things, maybe not small things, but things that you would take for granted as not being as complicated. Like Eli Reardon talking about how there are so much different things set with motions and what that meant for, blocking schemes and to get that nailed down wasn't something that was super easy for the tight ends to get right away. And that it took a little bit for Mitchell Evans and himself to really kind of take off in that aspect. And I think we saw that really with both of them become way better blockers and just way more effective. And then, just the running game in general, I think everyone got a little bit more comfortable. And some of that was experience of those guys. And there's certainly a lot more experience that has, of guys coming back. But it's more of like everyone is totally comfortable with all the checks and everything. And I think that is going to be a big, big deal. Even for a new quarterback, both those guys were here. That makes a big, big difference.
Well, we talk about that just even with Riley Leonard last year. Not having that spring practice, I think, had a big impact on, how quickly he could grasp the offense. It's one thing to kind of look at it, in diagrams and kind of watch it as you're standing behind the quarterbacks and you're not able to participate. It's something completely different when guys are running at you and they want to kill you, and you haven't had time to work with your receivers and kind of get into the flow of the offense. So we got to hope that that's a big thing that will help them advance the offense. Now, of course, the quarterback position is the one thing that everybody wants to talk about. I understand why. It's the most important position as far as the offense goes, and we've seen what good quarterback play can mean for the offense, and we've seen what, unfortunately, bad quarterback play can mean to the offense as well. So you've got two new guys; they're competing for it. What do you think is the criteria that Mike Denbrock is going to use to decide who the guy is? And what do you think is the most important in those criteria? Like for me, um, there's a lot of things that I think are very important, leadership, all that type of stuff. Um, but at the end of the day, scoring points, that's what matters. And which guy can move the football with this group of players, get them down the field and score on a consistent basis and score touchdowns, make some big plays. I think to me that would be the most important thing. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, points are going to be the most important thing, but you don't score points without great decision making, and that's really was the thing that made Riley Leonard so effective. Was his decision making, whether it was knowing when to run, knowing when to escape, knowing when to throw it away, knowing when to just like live to kind of fight another day when you're not going to get that big play, but also be able to create a big play when it mattered in the moment. That is what made him such an effective quarterback for Notre Dame, and really kind of where his game kind of elevated as they went along in the college football playoff. That was the difference. That was the biggest difference in the growth in the offense, was all of that. And so when it comes to, Carr and Minchie, I think there's so much of it when you watch them, and you can see in like the blue gold game, both those guys threw the ball in some plays where they were trying to be playmakers. And I get it. It's a blue gold game. You're trying to make plays, and playmaking is going to be a big part of it, obviously. But you know that both of them are capable of doing that. They're making plays with their legs and their arm. You got to make the right decision in the right time. All right. You got to know, hey, I shouldn't go for the end zone here. I can hit this other guy for like a 20-yard gain, or I just got to move the sticks here. I got to be able to, I got to make the right decision on this read to hand the ball off, because that's what the front is telling me to do. Right. That's thing. I know that this is the right time to pull in the RPO game. And I think when you see stuff like CJ Carr make like great plays, great touch passes and all that, those are awesome and spectacular, but that's not what's going to ultimately win him the job. That could give him the edge later on, but it's going to be, does he make the right decisions at the right time, in the right area of the field to say like, hey, we got to get points here. We got to do this. We got to move the sticks here, or we're backed up near our own end zone. I can't be taking a risk with this play, right? With this throw. And so much of that, I think, is going to be a huge part in deciding who the quarterback is. I certainly think like the ability to run is going to be huge as well, but I don't think that is something that will ultimately be a downgrade for any of these guys. Even though Minchie, you would put him and give him an edge there, but not enough of an edge to say like you can't run with Carr. Like he can't be a dual threat. He certainly can be, and he certainly can escape and scramble and do all of these things. That Leonard was good at as well. Just both of those guys aren't going to be the same runner that Leonard was, right? So that's an important thing to note. They're not going to be Jaden Daniels either, but you also have to take into account that Mike Denbrock, that's what he's had. He's had dual threat quarterbacks. They've been very, very effective. He's been great at utilizing designed runs and making that a big part of the offense. So I think ultimately, like that ability to run, the playmaking, those are going to be big pieces of it, but it's going to come down to decision making. It's got to be the number one priority when you're looking at what's critical to making the decision.
I think that's a very valid point because you think back to some of the quarterbacks that Notre Dame has had in the past, and they can make the wow plays. You know, the Tyler Buckners, the Brandon Wimbush, those types of guys. They can make the wow plays, but a lot of times they'd make a wow play followed up by a pick six. And I mean, you just got to go back to really the USC game and the way that USC was picking Notre Dame apart, and then all of a sudden the quarterback makes a couple dumb decisions, and that just changed the game. It didn't matter how well the guy played all the way up until the game, and he looked great all the way up until that point, but then made two really critical bad plays when they were trying to drive to catch up to Notre Dame. And so that's very, very important. You have to make the right decisions and do the right things. Again, I think that those two, that and moving the team, are going to be the most important things. Of course, you're looking at leadership and you're looking at accuracy and all those types of things as well. But I do think that those two are the most important. Now, Mike Denbrock has mentioned in the past that he'd like to get Jeremiah Love to kind of take that next step and show that he's an every down back. What do you think that looks like? Because as we saw at the end of the year, Jeremiah Love was not the player that we needed him to be at the most critical time. Do you want him in there taking shots from big time linebackers? Do you want him in there in third down and blitz pickup? Do you think that means more lining up in the slot as a receiver? What do you think that means? Because there is a risk by having him on the field at those times. But at the same time, you can't take your best player off the field all the time on the most critical down. So how do you massage that if you're Denbrock?
Well, I don't think they in any way they overused him last year. Like, I don't think that's why he got hurt, because they were trying to like run up the score or anything like some
Sure.
of the stuff where you could look at like with the previous season. And I know Denbrock wasn't the OC then, but they were trying to get Audric Estime over 100 yards in games because they wanted him to be like up for the Doak Walker Award, where they're probably up by 28 points. He probably didn't need to be in the game. And I thought they did a pretty good job of kind of managing that kind of stuff and not overusing him. So I don't think that is much of a worry. I think it's more about it has to be, he has to grow in the passing game. And he has so much more potential to give there. Obviously, they worked with him last spring at receiver. He was getting reps at receiver because they wanted to kind of expand things. And then in the very first game of the season, they line him up in the slot and they throw a fade to him. It didn't go well. And then they never came back to anything like that again. I think they have to do more of that. I think, not necessarily he has to line up in the slot, but he has to become more of a weapon in the passing game. Like, he had 28 catches, last season, like a pretty good number. That's fine. But 20 of his 32 targets were behind the line of scrimmage. He only had one target that was beyond 10 yards down the field. He could do more. Like, they could run some of the stuff that they were doing, with Kyron Williams, with Chris Tyree when he was in the backfield. They can run more wheels with him. They can run him down the seam. They can motion him out, get him matched up on linebackers and win in man coverage more. Like, absolutely do that. Like, even throw that fade to Aeneas Williams. That's a ball you can throw to Jeremiah Love too. And there's plenty of other examples that you can do with him that can make him a more dangerous and also make other teams really have to prepare to go against that more often. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that much more on third down. It could be just within the regular, parts of the offense within the flow of the game. Because I think, he had 16 missed tackles forced on those 28 receptions. Like, the guy is he's magic when he gets in space. He will be an absolute weapon after the catch if he catches a slant, or whether he catches it out, like any kind of thing. When he gets the ball in his hands, he can make more of that anytime he's able to catch the football. He's obviously not going to be a possession receiver. He can do a lot with it. So I think just expanding that part of the game, making him more dangerous, kind of doing a little bit more outside of just like the screen game and checkdowns.
I think it has to be. And, we called for the angle route countless times that we just didn't see. And I think he'd be effective in that. But I think arguably he would probably be the best player they have for yards after the catch, even considering the receivers. They got some explosive players, don't get me wrong, but you don't have guys that have his ability to turn left and right, run with the same kind of power that he has. That, a lot of the guys who can do that are, 190 pounds. They're just not used to powering through some guys like he can. So hopefully we see more of that with him, because he could be, as you mentioned, a very, very big contributor for Notre Dame in that regard. I'm sure you saw the recent picture of Eli Raritan standing next to Emil Wagner.
Yes.
I mean, the dude looks huge. I mean, he looks absolutely massive. And I don't want to speak for you, but for me, at the end of the year, I felt Eli Raritan was their best blocker, whether it was in line or movement. He was really destroying people in there at the end of the year. And the reason I bring this up is we know that Notre Dame wants to get the ball vertical downfield this year. They think it's important. They believe they have quarterbacks who can do it. And I think in order to grow the offense and attract the types of players that you're looking for, it's important that you show that you can do this on a consistent basis. The reason I say this is Eli has shown he's a very good inline blocker. He's shown you can move him, pull him in those types of situations. He's shown that you can line him out in the. I mean, look at that picture. The guy's massive.
I know.
You can line him up in the slot. You can do a lot of different things. Do you think that means that maybe we'll see less two tight end sets, and they just let Eli play a lot more because they're trying to showcase that they can do this? And it's hard to showcase you can get downfield vertically consistently when you have two tight ends in the game a lot. And sure, you're going to have that more on first and second down, and certainly not on third down. But I think to be effective, you got to start playing a lot of one tight end sets on second down, even in running situations. So your thoughts here?
I think they're going to play way more 11 this year. And I think it's part of it is what you said. They want to like showcase the passing game more and kind of grow that. It's hard to attract the receivers that you want to attract when you aren't playing in with 11 personnel, which is 3 receivers on the field. If every other team pretty much is, right? Like it's base for almost every other team. So I think you're going to see more of it. Obviously, it's still going to be a weapon for them to have 12 personnel, with 1 back, 2 tight ends. But I also think that there's a thing with Eli Raritan. The gap between him as tight end 1 and whoever is tight end 2 is probably going to be bigger this year than we've seen at tight end for Notre Dame in quite a while. Like I can't really like think of a time where there really has been as big of a gap. And it's not to say that guys like Kevin Bauman, who you hope has a healthy year and has a good year, or maybe Jack Larson. I mean, heck, maybe James Flanagan might be someone who could actually get to that eventually. We'll have to see how he does in camp and where he's at, but I think he's going to play as a freshman. But right now, if you said like the gap between Eli and then the next guy compared to the gap between him and Mitch Evans last year, it's so much wider. it's so much wider. It's so much wider than when like Mayer had, Mitchell Evans behind him, like all of that, right? Like, and so on and so forth as you go down the line. So I think partially because of that, that's one of the reasons why you're just going to see 11 more. Now, you don't want to have him totally wear down, and you want him to stay as effective as a blocker as he is. And I think one of the things with Mitchell Evans, you could see, I think he wasn't as effective as a blocker when he played more, when he played a heavy amount of snaps. And I think they probably needed to kind of mix and match that a little bit more. So I'll be kind of monitoring that to kind of see, because you want Eli to continue to be that effective and to be that big of a weapon in the running game, as well as be a weapon in the passing game. Because I think he's a guy who can get vertical, probably better than anyone they've had in quite a while. So
Yeah.
It's going to be a fine line, but I definitely see them, playing with 11 personnel more. And it's just, to me, it's just obvious that he's going to be the featured guy. And I think he's going to have a monster year. And it's not just based off him looking extremely jacked in that picture.
Yeah.
I think he's finally, he's completely healthy. He's had this, the full season. He's probably the most confident he's been in his health in a long time. And I think he just was a confident guy at the end of last year, and he's going to take off this year.
Excited to see, because we've been waiting for his potential to show, and I think he's always had the ability to do it. It's just health and confidence and that type of thing. And I think he realizes, hey, this is it. I got to do it this year. I got to show that I can do this. And Mike Denbrock has shown that when he has a weapon like Eli, he'll use it, but you got to be consistent in it. And I think the problem last year, Jimmy, it's interesting because you see some Notre Dame fans, complain about, is Denbrock the best we can do, and blah 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 blah. I mean, they completely forget that they start the season with 5 offensive linemen with 6 total starts. They end up playing 9 offensive linemen because so many guys are hurt throughout the year. You got just a wide receiver core that teams like Indiana, some of these other teams have what I would consider better receivers, and you're scratching your head going, why is that? There just wasn't a lot of weapons there. And you got a quarterback who really had no experience in this offense. And it's just, I think with Denbrock, he was just trying to figure out, what can I do that works right now? How can I just make sure that we're scoring enough points? And yeah, we're not, throwing to the tight end a lot, or we're not doing this, but we're doing what we have to do to make this thing work. But now that you have a bunch of experienced players back in offensive line, you've got some wide receivers who have started to emerge and can become the kind of players. You've got some in the portal. You got the tight end now fully healthy, all this type of stuff. Things are better set up, I think, to be a more explosive offense. And we just mentioned wide receivers, and here's the thing. We know Malachi Fields. We know Jaden Greathouse, Jordan Faison, Will Pauling. We think those are the knowns at this point. And I do think that those 4 are going to play most snaps, right? I think that it may be, if you're Ohio State, you may have some guys as your number 5 and number 6, who could end up with 25 catches or 30 catches. That's certainly possible if you're Ohio State, because you just got that many good players, and you want to keep them happy and they can be effective. But I do think it's important, Jamie, for Notre Dame to get a number 5 and a number 6. And I mean, how important do you think that is? Who do you think is going to emerge as the 5 and 6? And probably just as important, who should it be? Who do they need it to be? So let's get your thoughts on that, Jamie.
Well, I think it's important, but not as important as, like, it's not going to make or break whether or not the offense is great this year. I don't think that. Like, you want to build depth. I think that's important. But if you look at, say, like Ohio State last year, their fourth receiver, fourth most targeted receiver was Brandon Innes. He had 20 targets in 15 games, right? So I think Notre Dame's fourth most targeted guy is probably going to be targeted, more than that. But I bet the fifth guy won't be targeted more than that,
Yeah.
for the season. That's what it'll probably be. It's more about like kind of building the depth if a guy goes down. Certainly, like last year, it should have been a perfect opportunity when Faison got hurt for Chris Mitchell to kind of step up, and it never really kind of materialized for him. And you're going to need that because there's going to be injuries. But and you want to have guys that are ready for the next year too, because at least two of these guys, Fields and Pauling, are going to be gone. We'll see. Maybe Greathouse has such a great year that he's gone too, right? So you don't know about that with the top four, and you want to have guys kind of in place after. But I don't think it's like essential for those guys to be huge parts of the offense. They got to be contributors. Guys that can, every few games, one of these guys is going to make a play that helps them win a game. And also kind of builds on that for like next year as the season goes along, they're getting kind of better. I think about like Jordan Faison as a freshman, like that kind of thing. So I'm thinking right now that, I mean, the guy that everybody wants and should want to be is Cam Williams. People should want Cam Williams because he is big, extremely fast, athletic. He's someone that there's a reason why he was ranked as a top 50 prospect. He has incredible raw tools. Yes. And he's learning how to play receiver. And that was basically his whole first year, was like kind of learning how to play receiver at the college level within a college offense. But that has to materialize into something more this year. And he doesn't have to be a superstar, but he has to show that, hey, he has dude potential. And I think he showed some of that in the spring, but that has to take a jump up, this summer when we see him in the summer. And that has to be a point of emphasis. So, because if it doesn't happen, he's going to get passed by. And that's also where like Micah Gilbert comes in, because Micah Gilbert, unfortunately, I thought he was someone in line to have a really big spring, because he would have got a ton of reps at the boundary without Fields there too. But, he broke his hand, so he missed the most of spring. But he was the guy who really had the best freshman year, like really kind of impressed the most, had a great, early enrollee spring last year, looked good in camp last fall. So it's a big opportunity for him. And I would say those two guys are at the top of the list for me of like those fifth, sixth guys. But you also have to look at if like these guys aren't playing at a high enough level, it's right there for Elijah Burris to really kind of like step up. I think he had a good spring, as a young guy. But right now, it's kind of like for a guy like KK Smith, it's kind of now or never, or for him to kind of do something and step up. And similar to like a lot of guys, Logan Saldate too, because I really think like Burris was probably above those guys going into the summer. And if they don't catch, then all of a sudden, like where are they? And then a guy like Scrap Richardson could jump them, and that's kind of what the competition is all about. So it has to be like these guys really stepping up and forcing their way into Mike Brown and Mike Denbrock saying like, man, we got to get this guy in the field more. And that's the goal, and what the goal should be for all of those guys.
I agree. Cam Williams is the guy you want to see more than anybody, but I do think it's important for Micah Gilbert to start making some noise, because they just don't have another boundary guy. There's just nobody there. I think it's obvious they'll probably go back in the portal next year looking for another boundary guy just to make sure that they have that position covered. They just don't have a lot of big receivers. You mentioned a lot of guys. I've heard really good things about Logan Saldate and what he's done this summer. So, maybe he's a guy that could also emerge. But I do think Cam Williams, you really want to see that big step. And again, because of just position need, and next year, you got to hope Micah Gilbert's that guy too. And And it's just a bummer. I mean, they just continue to have bad luck, Jamie. I just can't believe the bad luck. It's like guys that they really need to take the next step and advance, all of a sudden they get hurt again. And it's just like, man, this is just bad luck after bad luck. And we just got to hope that that bad luck stops because, you get worried about, uh, you know, hopefully we don't have the same crap that we had last year when it comes to injuries. And that's a little bit of a concern for me. All right. Um, the Jugasaw injury certainly, I think is something that is going to be hard to overcome. And it's not, I think the fact that it happened now and not in fall camp, I think is a good thing, because you get Sullivan Absher, who we all think is probably the guy that's going to step in there. You get his mindset right, and he gets to work here the last couple weeks as, this is my thing now. This is my time, and has that mindset and can kind of start working with those guys and getting the communication down, those types of things. It's not the same as when you're actually practicing, but just getting familiar and comfortable with it. So I do think that's a good thing. The other thing I think is with Absher, he's what I call swing player. He could play guard, he could play tackle if he had to. I'm not sure he's the best left tackle prospect, but could play right, I think, and be pretty solid. And it's nice that this guy's going to get a lot of reps and opportunities, because chances are, as we've seen, Jamie, even if Jugasaw comes back and takes his spot, which we believe he will, Absher's probably going to be called on again. Somebody else is going to go down with an ankle or a knee. That's just the reality of college football today, especially when you're playing 15, 16 games. You're going to have guys that get injured. So, blessing in disguise. And then the other thing is, now that you know that this is a situation, you got to look for your next two that you're looking for. What happens if left tackle, if Knapp goes down? Is it Styles Prescott? Is it Absher? What if Wagner goes down? Is it Will Black? Is it Augustine? Is it Absher? And then also you got to look at guard and center. Where do they go? And I believe Sullivan's played some center too. They've looked at him a little bit there as well. So he can do a lot of positions, and I think he's probably the next guard in for sure, possibly the next tackle. But I do think you have to start at some point kind of slotting guys that, Styles Prescott is our next left tackle of the future, or Gerby Lambert is the next tackle of the future, left tackle or right tackle. I do think that that's where you have to start in fall camp, Jimmy. You got to start kind of moving towards that with some of these sophomore guys. You got to start making some decisions that this is the way we think this is going. Your thoughts here on this?
Well, I do think in a way it can be a blessing in disguise, because I think so many of these guys where if you kind of think that they already had, well, we got our five, like this is our five that they're going to go with. And it's not to say there's still not going to be competition behind them, but now it just opens everything up for guys to really kind of step up. And it is a huge opportunity for Sullivan Absher, and they're very high on him. Like they're very high on what he can do and, what kind of player he can be. But he's got to go out and earn it. Like he's got to go out and earn it, because if he doesn't, then maybe one of these other guys can take the spot. And that has been the thing that I've liked probably the most with Joe Rudolph, is that no one has had a safe spot. No one has had a safe spot. You have to go out there and earn it. They don't just keep guys in line. If someone's better and they pass you, they pass you. Then you got to go back and earn it back. You can earn it back. That's what's happened, right? So I think I'm really interested to kind of see how they feel about all of those guys, because it's easy to just slot in Absher and think like, yes, he's a guy who can start here. He probably could start at a lot of programs already, slide him in there and see how it goes. But like you said, you have to be able to look at all these other guys, whether or not, like at left tackle, maybe it is Prescott's the next guy. Maybe Will Black comes in, and certainly he's a super talented guy. I think he's got a very, very bright future in front of him. He's coming in the summer. I mean, we saw Joe Alt come in the summer And it's a little bit different because obviously he doesn't have the former Pro Bowl father helping him out and all of
Yeah.
that. But he also isn't getting used to the weight, like putting on all that weight. He was already a big dude, and he might just be someone that is undeniably good that they need to give a chance. And if he plays well enough, maybe they want to take a look at him and they think maybe this guy could be the left tackle at some point this year. And maybe we can slide Anthony Knapp, because certainly Anthony Knapp has got a lot of like Robert Hainsey traits where I think he could probably start at like 5 positions on the offensive
Yeah.
line. And
Yeah.
and he's certainly like mean enough to move people at any of these spots. But I'm really interested in guys like Joe Otting, because everyone was concerned about his size and what he was going to be. You know,
Good
he's
weight now. Yeah.
311. He's 311 pounds now. What does he look
Yeah.
at 311 pounds? He got more reps in the spring because of what they're doing. Maybe he's someone who can push a little bit. Like Chris Terek missed the spring. I like Chris Terek. I remember seeing him as a freshman, and he had to lose a ton of bad weight. And I thought, man, I don't know if this guy ever played. Last year when I saw him in camp, I thought, wow, what a transformation. He made a big transformation physically and looked and competed like a guy that maybe he's got a shot to play. So maybe he's a guy who can push. We didn't see him in the spring, but maybe he's a guy who can push. We don't know, but Gerby Lambert certainly could be just one of these guys. If he's one of the 5 best guys with Jagasa out, then he's got to play somewhere, right? He's got to play somewhere. And he looks like an absolute monster, and I know he's coming back off the shoulder. He is huge. When you make Charles Jagasa look small, you are beyond a monster. So
Huge. Yes.
yeah. So I really think that they'll be able to figure it out and get, guys in the right spots. It's a good thing that it happened, early. So they already had the chance to kind of plan for it, like even earlier than what happened to Jagasa last year, which happened the first weekend of camp. But they can plan all the contingencies. They can do all this kind of thing. And you know what? Maybe one of these guys plays so well that they look at it and they say, okay, well, now we're going to reconfigure things when Jagasa gets back, or Jagasa really has to come back and earn it, because, it happens. You miss time. You got to come back and be dominant, not just come back and just be like, hey, here's your spot. Come back and be dominant. So I think it could ultimately turn out to be a good thing. Obviously, you wish that they didn't play Miami and Texas A&M in the first 2 weeks and Jagasa missing those games, but I still think they're going to be more than fine on the offensive line.
What do you think is the ceiling of this offense? And I mean, last year, not a lot of 300-yard passing games. There just weren't, do you see that as a potential with this group? Do you think Notre Dame can continue to be a 200-yard, a game rushing team if they're a 300-yard passing team? How do you see? What do you think is the ceiling of this team right now? The offense, I should say.
I mean, I think the ceiling is higher than it was last year, and they finished 6th in OF plus last year. Like, I absolutely think it can be a top 5 offense. I still think the running game is going to be the bread and butter. I still think, when you have Jeremiah Love and JD Price and Aeneas Williams, and we keep hearing like they're just raving about Nolan James and all that too, and Kedron Young is a beast, and who knows what Jabron Payne's gonna be like, and they're loaded in the backfield. They can do a lot of stuff there, and I think especially when you have a new quarterback, you're gonna want to kind of lean on that in the running game and just really like take that pressure off of that young quarterback as much as possible. You don't want that guy throwing 40 times a game to win these early games. So I think at the same time, I think the receivers are just flat out better than they were last year. They're going to be better there. I think the offensive line, even though even without Jagasaw at the beginning of the season, I still think that's going to be definitely better than it was at the beginning of last season. They're going to be much better there. They're going to be able to protect more, do a lot more things. They also said, when we talked about the familiarity with the offense, I just think the ceiling is so much higher there for them to go into games and not just, they can be different from week to week where they say, well, this week, hey, we're going to probably run for 300 this week. Hey, maybe the next week we're going to throw for 300 because they're going to have those options there. A lot of it's going to be about the growth of the quarterback, but I think that's going to be on the table for them because I think the personnel wise, this is the strongest they've been just like in supporting cast, I think since 2015, really. And is it that strong? Probably not that strong. I mean, the strongest since then, I would say.
What concerns you about the offense?
I mean, it is the quarterback and the fact that they're going and the first game of the season is at Miami, right? And you wish that game was, the neutral site Navy game at the beginning of the season rather than where the quarterback can kind of get comfortable against a rebuilding Navy defense and it's not the same. And I know that, Miami's defense was not good last year, but they're going to be a bit better this year at the very least. And that game's going to be on the road. It's going to be a hostile environment. It's just a first start. That quarterback's not going to be as good game 1 as he is going to be game 10. Right. So I think that part of it. And then, the pressure of hey, you're going to play Texas A&M. They're going to be a pretty good defense as well. You're going to have those early on. And I think even if you look at where Notre Dame is in general, in terms of who they're playing this year, their toughest games are their first, 5 of their first 6 games are their toughest games of the year. Right. And at some point there, the quarterback has to kind of graduate to a different level within those games. It can't all just be about the running game and Jeremiah Love and all that. It's got to grow into more. I mean, fortunately, I think the weapons are going to be good enough and the offensive line is going to be good enough to allow them to do that. But, I would worry about kind of not a slow start, but they're not going to hit the ground running. They're not going to be hitting all cylinders at the beginning of the season. I think it's going to, take some time. And I mean, if they do hit the ground running, then look out. Cause I think you could fairly confidently say they are going to hit their ceiling as an offense.
All right. It looks like we will have a few minutes here to answer any questions from people in the chat. If you guys have any questions for Jamie and I, feel free to post any questions you have. In the meantime, I did want to get to recruiting and another topic real quick. The other topic is I was listening to college sports radio and I listened to New Weasel and, he was talking about how he just wished teams would play more tough games, and he's mentioning about a lot of these teams playing these tough games and blah, blah, blah. And I sat there and I thought, dude, you were a coach. I mean, there's reasons they don't play so many tough games. One, injury. I mean, you don't want your guys playing against 12 straight or 15 straight opponents where everybody's out there and it's a complete and total war, right? You want some of your guys to take the second half off on some of these games, and then it builds depth. And I was surprised that here's a coach that's just going on and on about, well, we want more and more, and and it's just you were a coach. You should understand that these kids are already taxed, physically, all to the the body. They're almost playing an NFL schedule, and they're not, preparing their bodies like an NFL player would because they have other responsibilities. So I was kind of surprised by that, Jamie. And I sure hope we don't see, nobody wants to watch Notre Dame play, Miami of Ohio. It's not that exciting. There's always a chance you could lose, and it's, there's not much, but I just think it's important for depth developing your young talent, I think is very, very important, but also just making sure that, uh, you know, as a head coach, that you can keep people focused on what matters. I think it's a good way, a good opportunity as a head coach, and we've seen Marcus Freeman struggle with that in the past. Of you know, how do I keep my team focused in these types of games? And I think that's part of developing the culture. And then also, as I mentioned, um, time off for your starters. It was wonderful last year that Notre Dame, so many times during the year, that we got to see some of these guys that we've been talking about. We got to see Kedron Young out there, doing his thing, and we got to see some of these young offensive linemen out there doing their thing, and young wide receivers, and it's a good thing. So I was surprised by Neuheisel saying that. Your thoughts on that, real quick?
Well, I'm not surprised that he's saying it just because it's easy for him to say it now because he's
Yeah,
not
yeah, you
he's
didn't have
not
to worry about it.
going
Yeah,
through it. Um, but at the same time, I totally get what he's saying. Like when you see that, I know we already talked about it last week. Me and Greg did about Indiana backing out of playing Virginia. Like, what are we doing here? Like, if
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
if we're backing out of playing Virginia to play Kennesaw State, and they're playing just like a joke of like basically like an old school Bill Snyder Kansas State out of conference schedule, just just say you don't want to compete at all. Like, I don't want to hear that guy talk about any of the kind of stuff that he was saying
Yeah, totally, at
last
the end of
year.
last year. Yeah, no doubt.
And I'm totally fine with you know, scheduling like a couple easy games each year. I think it's it's a good thing for those smaller schools to get that money to be able to still survive. And, they need that money to be able to run their programs and fund their programs and fund some of these other programs within their school. So I think that's a good thing. And it's also just a good thing just to go there and hopefully, like you said, have that chance to, blow some of these teams out. But it's one of these things with the NFL. And the reason why the NFL, why there's so much like division games, like always matter. Like they always matter. Um, everybody wants the Sunday night football game to matter. They want all of these games to matter. And obviously there's some stinker weeks in the NFL too, but there's always going to be some good matchups, and there's going to be like good teams. And no one ducks out of being like, the Ravens don't say, well, we don't want to play the Steelers twice. We're only going to play them once this year. Or the
Yeah,
Lions aren't going to be like, hey, we're not going to Green Bay. Let's do it at a neutral site. Like, I hate that. I hate that about college football, how some of these coaches are just want to duck any kind of challenge that is outside of the conference. I hate that USC, what they're doing. It's so stupid. And Mike, I've watched so many of the kids that they have committed. They have an absolute stud recruiting class. They should be thinking like, hey, we can compete with anybody going forward based on a lot of the guys that they've have committed in the class. And to be like, now we're going to play an easier schedule, or we're not going to play this rivalry anymore. Getting rid of rivalries is just
yeah, I agree.
so
Yeah,
stupid. Like,
I agree.
I just think that there has to be like a fine line there, and there should be that. That's why it shouldn't be on the schools to create the schedules. They have to have a different body. And I don't care if it's like someone from each conference who's doing it. There's a greater person from somewhere else doing it. But there has to be something else to make to add some kind of like scheduling balance there, that every SEC team can't play 4 cupcakes. Not like, hey, 2 cupcakes, fine. 4, no. Like, just because even you can't even like schedule Virginia. You can't schedule Wake Forest. You can't schedule like, just there has to be something there where because really, if you look at it, Notre Dame, and they did last year, those should still be blowing out those teams. right? And that's the way that I kind of see it, is like, you don't need to play, Sun Belt teams and these teams and that teams every week. You should be able to play all these other teams, because there's a gap between the lower level Power 4 teams and the upper tier.
So here's the interesting question, and now that you've said this, is I think you and I, and again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you and I agree that we're going to see a big giant conference when it's all said and done, whether that is 48 teams, whether that's 64 teams, whether that's 72 teams, whatever the number may be, 84. I think that'd be way too many, but I have a feeling we may get to like a 64. Like these are the 64 best programs in the country. Where I think it's going to be fun is when that happens. There aren't going to be, it'll be interesting to see. If I'm Notre Dame, I'm trying to negotiate. There is no conference, right? Nobody has a conference at that. There's no like 4 tiers and 4 conferences and those types of things. But I do think it's important to have 5 games that are traditional, like, Alabama should always play Auburn, and Texas should always play Texas A&M, and Notre Dame should always play USC, and Michigan should always play Ohio State, and those types of things. I think that those types of things should happen. But what I would like to see, I think would be very interesting, is if you did come to the 64, let's make teams do everything that Notre Dame does, right? I want to see Alabama have to go play Washington, right? Out at Washington, right? I want to see Texas having to fly up to Penn State and playing a game, in the elements up at Penn State. I want to see that in November, right? I want to see. Let's make it a real level playing field, right? Let's make teams do what Notre Dame has been doing for the past 100 and however many years, traveling all over the country, and then we'll see who's really a mentally tough team. So, if the ACC or the SEC can bus, to half their games, or 70% of their games, they can just take a bus to them because they're so close. It's another if you have to fly all the way across the country a lot of times, as USC found out last year, having to do that. So if it gets to the 64, which a lot of people think it is, I really hope that Notre Dame and some of these other teams say, you know what, we're not going to do this, 4-section conference type of thing, because really it's the same thing. Let's make it a real competition. Let's make those games happen because people want to see it. And I don't care if Alabama goes and plays first game of the year at Washington. I want to see Alabama go out to Washington in late October, right? I want to see, because Notre Dame has had to load up their front end schedule, as we've seen. I mean, hardly anybody else is playing the kind of schedule that Notre Dame is playing at the beginning of the year. That's a big disadvantage for Notre Dame, right? Now, if you could take A&M and some of these teams and spread them out a little bit, then you have an opportunity to where, I'm still okay with the teams they're playing. It's just how they're stacked. And that's always been my argument against Notre Dame and scheduling and being out of conferences. It puts too many roadblocks right at the beginning of the year when you're just trying to figure out who you are as an offense and a defense. And, you're playing Michigan. Okay, well, Michigan will say they play Notre Dame. Well, they got 3 cream puffs at the beginning of the year. And so even if they lose to Notre Dame, they're 3-1 in September. The problem with Notre Dame is they were 2-2 or worse too many times because of the difficult schedule they played. So I'm hoping that if that ever happens, that Notre Dame really fights strongly that, we're not going to go with 4 separate conferences and then, meet in the middle here and this type of crap. We're not doing that. Let's go 64. Everybody's equal. And we're going to start making the schedule, and we're going to keep in mind the rivalries and this and that when we make the schedule. But, half of your games are going to go against teams that are out of your area. You're going to have to travel to do this. And I really hope that that's what happens, because to me, I think that's what makes college football great. I love to see those games where, Alabama goes to Penn State, or Alabama goes to Washington, or Tennessee has to travel to Ohio State, or those are the fun games, I think, versus, watching another Tennessee Georgia game. Who cares? I want to see how they stack up against the other teams across the country and out of the conference, because that gives you a better understanding of how good each conference is when they play each other, and they don't play each other enough. So, your thoughts on that? We'll close down the show, my friend.
Well, I couldn't agree more with that, Mike. I really think that what they should probably do is have like a designated week where it's like all of these Power Four conferences, even before they get to that point where maybe it's like a super conference or whatever, and just say like, hey, this is the week where you're scheduling you're playing the ACC team this week. SEC, or SEC, you're playing Big Ten this week, right? Other Big Ten school, you're playing the ACC, like something, and everyone has to do it. So it's like all on the calendar, and it's just there, and you can't avoid it. But so there's this site I was looking at that had all of like the distances in miles that teams travel to play these games. And I mean, poor Stanford. I was looking at some of their road trips, and they got some just massive road trips. To be fair, there's a lot of teams coming massive trips going back to them. But with the SEC, there's like their teams, there's like Oklahoma's playing a game at Temple for some reason. I have no idea why they're playing at Temple and how that got stuck on there. It's probably some old deal back in the day. And Texas is playing at Ohio State. And Texas A&M is playing at Notre Dame early in the season. Those are the only trips that are like big trips for those schools the whole year. That's for the entire SEC. No one else is doing anything. Everything else is like the smallest road trip you could think of, because they're mostly playing, within a conference and within their own conference. And yes, I understand those are tough games, but when you don't have any of the other travel stuff to go along with it, that's why why do you think Florida State and Miami and these teams, when they come up in November to play Notre Dame, it's not just the cold that is giving them a hard time. It's the extra travel and all the other logistics that go along with it. And I want to see more of that, because you want to see the best teams, the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Ohio States, the Notre Dame. You want to see them tested. And you see that with Notre Dame, obviously, a lot. And fairness to Ohio State, they do typically, schedule at least one big game each year out of conference. But Michigan too, I'll even give them credit, even though I hate to give Michigan any credit for anything. But like most of these other teams, they just don't even bother. They don't even bother. And that's just sad. Like they got to change that. And if that isn't part of whatever the next iteration of college football is, then I don't even know what we're doing here. That it should be an absolute essential part of it.
Well, the other result of it, Jamie, is you get what happened last year. All these pundits and all these morons out there, oh, well, the SEC deserves all these playoff spots because it's the toughest conference. Then we found out they weren't even close to the toughest conference. They got their butt kicked the entire way in college football playoffs. So, this narrative is built that it's such an amazing thing. And you listen to Lane Kiffin, oh, well, these coaches, they couldn't survive in the SEC. What are you talking about? I mean, all the other teams beat the crap out of them when they played them. So don't tell me that they're so great and that this is such a difficult conference, because when push came to shove and they had to play anybody, and by the way, these teams are all thought that Georgia's going to roll Notre Dame, and, all these things were going to happen. Tennessee's going to pound on Ohio State, and, all these things were out there. The absolute opposite was true. And so I think it does affect, when you're trying to get it in the playoff and where you're seated, because they have these narratives that are out there that aren't true, and you can't disprove them because they haven't played anybody to show that, maybe Alabama isn't as good as people think, or maybe Georgia isn't as good as people think because Georgia went up to Michigan and Michigan slapped them around. So maybe they're the best, SEC team, but it doesn't matter if Michigan can slap them around. So that's why I think it's important is if you want to get a real accurate seeding amongst this college football playoff, and that's going to be important moving forward, is if you want to get a good seeding on how this is all going to unfold, these teams got to play each other in the regular season to have any sort of understanding of who really is a good team and what really is a good conference. And so I'm just hoping that if it does move to that's what we see. So, all right, folks, that's going to be it for the show. Greg, you have something to add? Want to add?
Well, real quick, do you got Teddy Gerard is he's announced he said he's set a commitment date for Thursday. Do you guys want to talk about him real quick because he's going to commit before your next show? I wonder if you guys want to talk about that a little bit.
I love him. I think he's a very, very talented player. I want to see a little bit more. I want to see a little bit more film before I say this guy is, 5-star player, that type of thing. I love a lot of the throws he makes, and I love that he takes chances. Sometimes he takes chances that I'm like, I don't know if I would have taken those chances. But I think Peyton Houston, I'd say the exact same thing. With Houston, he just threw so many balls that I sat there and went, that's not going to fly in college football. That's picked off. Like this particular play here, this is probably going to get picked off in college football. That's probably going to get picked off. Now you take some chances and you like to see that. But I love this kid's potential. I really do, and I think he's just kind of scratching the surface. I think out of all the guys that they could have offered, I like him probably the best myself. I think he's that good, and it sounds like Notre Dame's got a really good chance to land him. And what is that going to do to 2027 football recruiting, at wide receiver if you can land a guy like this? Because it sounds like, he's going to continue to move up and up the rankings and got the size, got everything you're looking for. Anything you want to add, Jamie?
Yeah, I really like him. I think he's a fantastic player. You see like the touch. He's a really good athlete. He's also a multi-sport athlete, pretty good baseball player as well, which is always a good sign. I think, there are things that I want to see him improve with his game, but he's a sophomore. Like that's something that you expect to see with a lot of guys. Like, you're watching like sophomore film here. And he's a legit 6'3", so you like the size. He's got big hands. He's someone who can be like a dual threat, can escape the rush. And I think too, Mike, like part of kind of like building on what you said, him being I think he's a great prospect, a super high level prospect, and that is super important. But in order to have that quarterback commit early and it means something to the rest of the class, that guy has to be highly ranked because the other players see that ranking, and maybe that might not, whether that ranking is accurate or not. And I think it is pretty accurate with him. He's a great prospect, but it's got to be someone that these guys want to play with and say like, that's a great player. I want to play with that guy. And he is that kind of guy. Like he's going to be a very, highly ranked prospect. He already is a highly ranked prospect. So, like he's already a top 100 kid. He's got a good chance at being like, a top 50-ish type kid.
I think so, yeah.
And maybe a 5-star too, right? Because I want to see like what his development is. But he's definitely got a chance, and I would put him as like, not quite as polished as CJ Carr was at that same age, but that kind of upside, ceiling of where you could see it. Yeah.
All right, folks, that's going to be it for the show. I hope you enjoyed that. Next week, we'll be back talking defense. Then Yama's headed to South Bend, and fall camp will start. I'll be there the following week, and look forward to seeing you, Jamie. We'll be crisscrossing for a couple days. I haven't seen you in a while, so looking forward to seeing you. And then can't wait. I just can't wait to get this thing rolling, man. Going to be a fun season, and I love where recruited's heading as well. So this has been fun. This has been a lot of fun. I think just got to get through these first couple games and hopefully somehow end up with a W in both. And I think things are going to be really cooking at that point. So we got to hope for the best, and everybody pray for an injury-free fall camp. That hasn't happened in a long time, but we just got to hope that happens, because if they do, it should be a really fun season. Thanks for listening. We will talk to you guys next week on Power Hour.